Hi, I'm Gabe from Unsolicited Designs, and welcome to Report Cards, a series where I grade every mythic from the set based on how unique they are, what they can do beyond a regular rare, and the creative deck building opportunities they provide. In this video, I'll be looking over the legendary creatures of the set. I hope I'll learn to like and subscribe for me by the end of the video, and I'd love to hear what you think about these cards and my analysis of them. Without further ado, on to the review. The well-worn trope of a character being suddenly rescued at the last moment is now a fully realized Magic card. The Wandering Rescuer. For 2 white and 3 generic, you get a 3/4 legendary human samurai noble with flash, convoke, and double strike. Additionally, other tap creatures you control have hexproof. Kudos to the design team for really capturing the sudden savior trope on this card. It's a creature, which is a must. Flash lets it appear at just the right time, which all sudden saviors do. Convoke means it can be cast totally unexpectedly, as all sudden saviors are. Double strike lets the Wandering Rescuer fell the threat and survive. And the hexproof ability will shield any of your creatures that are in harm's way. And combines extra nicely with Convoke by letting you tap your targeted creature or creatures to literally summon the Wandering Rescuer to their aid. I think that's about as succinct an encapsulation of this card as you can get. One last design note though, I really like how this design pairs with the survivor mechanic in the set. Not only will it allow your creatures to survive attempted removal, it lets you tap them with Convoke and benefit from their survivor trigger without putting them into combat. So not only a flavor win, but a mechanical synergy win too. It's no wonder that the Wandering Rescuer gets an A. Our next mythic is a lean, mean, green pummeling machine. Tyvar the Pummeler. For 2 green and 1 generic, you get a 3/3 legendary elf warrior. Tap another untapped creature you control. Tyvar the Pummeler gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. And for 2 green and 3 generic, creatures you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. This is a pretty clean-cut design. As long as you have an untapped creature available, Tyvar is going to be quite difficult to get rid of. And if you're pursuing an elf theme, then having creatures in play is a prerequisite. Giving your creatures vigilance, or finding ways to untap them, will be doubly beneficial, as you'll be able to attack with them and use them to protect Tyvar. And in the case of mana-producing creatures, untapping them will mean generating obscene amounts of mana. And what better outlet for all your extra mana than activating Tyvar's second ability? As a baseline, it will give all of your creatures +3/+3, which is actually way more deadly than it might seem. If you've got enough mana for a second activation, then you're looking at an additional +6/+6, which is exactly as deadly as it seems. And it isn't hard to find a creature with higher power, or ways to boost power so activations yield even more massive bonuses. Like an uppercut, this is an explosive yet simple design. Grade A. I don't know how many horror movies feature ninjas, but here is Kaito, Bane of Nightmares. For 1 blue, 1 black, and 2 generic, you get a 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker. Kaito has ninjutsu for 1 blue, 1 black, and 1 generic, which means you can return an unblocked attacker you control to hand and put this card onto the battlefield from your hand, tapped and attacking. During your turn, as long as Kaito has 1 or more loyalty counters on him, he's a 3/4 ninja creature and has hexproof. For +1 loyalty, you can get an emblem with ninjas you control get +1/+1. His 0 loyalty ability says, Surveil 2, then draw a card for each opponent who lost life this turn. And for -2 loyalty, tap target creature. Put 2 stun counters on it. There have only been 13 planeswalkers who act as creatures, and 8 of them are Gideon. So while this isn't brand new territory we're exploring, it is still pretty fertile design space that I'm interested in exploring, and Kaito is diving right in. Ninjutsuing a walker into play is a unique option. It looks like it will make Kaito harder to defend, since you'll have 1 less creature to block with, that is, unless you manage to recast the creature you return to hand, but that could be more expensive than it's worth. Realistically, you'll want to Ninja Kaito in so you can get him up and running a turn early, and while the board is likely less crowded. Plussing to get an emblem is wild, and has only appeared on 2 other cards to this point, if you include a 0 loyalty ability. Growing Kaito turn after turn looks like a threatening option, but in conjunction with other ninjas, this ability is obscene. Anthem effects are strong individually, and overwhelming in multiples. And as emblems, these can't even be interacted with, which is a major advantage. Manipulating the top 2 cards of your deck with Surveil 2 is a fine option if the board is stable, or if you're in need of some action. you can help stock your graveyard, and potentially even draw 3 extra cards each turn if you can connect with each of your opponents, or cause any other means of life loss, which you should have plenty of options for. And lastly, his minus ability gives you 2 turns of neutralizing an attacker or blocker. This will make it easier for Kaito to attack, help protect his loyalty from attack, and will open up the other players at the table for attractive combat steps for 2 whole turn cycles. A growing lethal threat, an option to filter and draw cards, and a tool to manipulate offense and defense for the whole table. Kaito, Bane of Nightmares, looks like he could be a nightmare for your enemies. Grade A. There aren't many bright points in the horror-filled house of Duskmourn, but this next card aims to be one of them. Niko, Light of Hope. For 1 white, 1 blue, and 2 generic, you get a 3/4 legendary human wizard. When Niko enters, create 2 shard tokens. For 2 generic and tap Niko, exile target non-legendary creature you control. Shards you control become copies of it until the beginning of your next end step. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Shards are a fabulous token, and it's always been a bummer to me that there was only ever one source of them. This isn't as self-repeatable as Planeswalker Niko, but you don't have to work too hard to make it happen, especially in blue and white. And Niko plays right into this strategy as well, acting as a blink effect for your non-legendary creatures. Of course, if you're looking to take advantage of Enter's triggers, turning your shards into copies doesn't do anything to advance that plan. Instead, perhaps it's best paired with creatures that have both Enters and attack triggers, so that you can get the benefits of both. To really push Niko's ability to the limits, you'll absolutely want to find ways to get more shards. Blinking certainly is an option, but there are some fun new choices when it comes to copying tokens. Crazier still, if you turn your artifacts into creatures, you could then make your shards into copies of them, and then use the shards to make tokens of them, so that you can make more shards. I think there's some pretty wild strategies that you could pursue here. Niko invites you to explore what triggers you can stack up from the entire selection of white and blue non-legendary creatures, as well as letting you push how many triggers you can get by scaling up the number of shards you possess. There's a lot of depth to this design, and I hope I was able to show you why. So I'm putting Niko, Light of Hope, into the S tier. And lastly, the master of the house, doling out the demonic charm, Valgavoth, Terror Eater. For 3 black and 6 generic, you get a 9/9 legendary Elder Demon with flying and lifelink. Valgavoth also has Ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. If a card you didn't control will be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. There's something satisfying about seeing a 9/9 for 9 mana. There's even 9 letters in Valgavoth, and the card has 9 lines of text. As for the design of the card, flying and lifelink are great, letting you play both offensively and defensively at the same time, and most likely meaning Valgavoth will stabilize your position as soon as you cast it. Now, the clause about exiling cards exists to set up the ability to cast them for yourself, but I love being able to interfere with opposing graveyard shenanigans, and you should make sure your decks are prepared to do the same. And while I wouldn't exactly call a 9-drop a good source of incidental graveyard hate, Valgavoth does check that box all the same. It's valuable to note that the cards get exiled regardless of how they wound up in the yard, so find some creative ways to make that happen, like discard and mill. Lastly, being able to play those cards is exceptional. It will effectively increase your hand size without requiring you to do much at all. Keep in mind that you can play lands that get exiled too, which is value that I love. Paying life to cast spells this way could prove costly, adding up quite fast if you get very aggressive. But being able to bypass mana cost this way is tremendously powerful, as has been demonstrated in the past. And of course, Valgavoth's lifelink will do some work offsetting your life payments, particularly if you can find some ways to force your opponents to attack into the loving arms of your Elder Demon. It will require some thoughtful setup, but I would advise having a way to get as many cards into exile as possible on the same turn you get Valgavoth into play. Then, cash in some life on the most lucrative options right away. It would be a real shame to spend 9 mana on this card and miss out on the opportunity to get some use out of it. And having the ability to cast spells as though they had flash could be a very valuable consideration. It would combine fabulously with Valgavoth's ward ability. When your opponent attempts to remove Valgavoth, they'll have to sacrifice permanents first. Once they do, you can cast them with flash to extract some final value before their kill spell resolves. Tremendous power at a high price. Valgavoth, Terror Eater, will be feasting on your opponent's life totals and permanents. Grade S. And there you have it, my grades for the 5 mythic legendary characters of Duskmourn. Are my assessments befitting their stature, or is my analysis unworthy? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. I hope I earned a like and subscribe from you, and I'd love it if you'd share this video. If not, thanks for hearing me out. You can follow me on X at UnsolicitedMTG for channel updates and other nonsense. And be sure to check back next week for the final part of my reviews, where I'll be giving a tour of the 5 mythic room cards. Once again, I'm Gabe from Unsolicited Designs, and who asked me anyways?